As Lane Kiffin said in the SEC teleconference today, this is the number one team in the SEC versus the number one team in the Pac-12. This cross-country classic. I think Washington State fans will enjoy it and probably see a place in the Southeastern Conference that they can really relate to, honestly.
Washington State heads down to Oxford, Mississippi this weekend to face Ole Miss for the first time that these universities are facing off. The first time that Washington State is facing an SEC opponent since 2013 when they faced Auburn. Today we have a great episode. We've got Mkristo Bruce as usual to talk through his thoughts and insights on this upcoming game. And then we also have Steven Willis, who is the host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, to talk through Ole Miss's season so far and what to expect from them. But before we get into it, as always, make sure to check out CougFan.com, subscribe to their premium membership for all things WSU athletics with all of the latest insights and breaking news. And if you or someone you know is thinking of buying, selling, or refinancing on the West Coast, my goal is to help as many sports fans, athletes, and WSU alum get into the home of their dreams. I'm a mortgage loan officer in Washington, Oregon, California, Idaho, or Arizona. I'll have a link in the description to reach out and connect. Of course, Mkristo is also a mortgage lender if you'd like to use him. And if you are in a sunny state, make sure to reach out to Dylan to look at the cost of your solar.
Yeah, sometimes it doesn't even have to be sunny. We can still put those things right on the roof for you, okay?
Sometimes they charge through the clouds, right?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it was a great show that we have lined up. Obviously, we've pre-recorded some of these interviews. We've had a busy past couple weeks, both of us dealing with travel. Connor dealing with a little dumper now. We are live right now where it's 2-2. Quick Mariners update. How are we feeling going into game 5?
Yeah, so for our Mariners fans out there, obviously I was completely expecting to win this game and up 3-0 in the fourth, fifth inning. Then, Bryce Miller allows a run. They bring in Gabe Spire, which I'm going to record a separate episode. I'm going to record a separate episode talking about Dan Wilson's bullpen management because I personally agree with his decision. There's a ton of it's all hindsight's 2020. We see what happened after the fact, but when you look at it in the moment with the stats that are there, I think it was the right decision. But now you got to face Tarek Skubal and beat him for a fourth time this season.
Is he going to be on 5 days rest, like exactly 5, or is it going to be 4?
He last pitched on Sunday. So it's short rest. It's like 4 days rest. So, and like I mentioned, the Mariners have already beat Tarek Skubal 3 times this year. This will be the 4th time. So I still have faith. If it was an easy series, it wouldn't be a Mariners game. It wouldn't be Mariners baseball. You got to take your blood pressure medication when you're watching the Mariners, basically.
One thing that it really annoys me is Big Cat. I mean, just is a total setup. And Steven told us this. A total setup. I guess Lane Kiffin was on some show with Big Cat last week and
the Barstool
podcast. Asked him, hey, can you set something up for me? So Big Cat, one day ago, is it just me or is Washington State kind of a live dog this weekend? I think they could beat Ole Miss outright. Total trap game. No chance Lane has his team ready with Georgia on deck. Hey, Big Cat. That's for you, buddy. All right. Remember, we're 2-0 against Wisconsin. All right. 2-0. And also went out to Madison and beat that ass.
And also something that's kind of funny, Lane Kiffin in his presser today talking about this upcoming matchup with Washington State. So essentially the tweet is Lane Kiffin and using the 2-team Pac-12 to hype up the Ole Miss Washington State matchup with a very true statement. It's a first place SEC team versus a first place Pac-12 team. Obviously, Oregon State is currently winless. Washington State is 3-2. First place in the Pac-2 right now. So, I mean, we'll see if Ole Miss comes into this a little, short-sighted. Obviously,
that's a backhanded compliment, Connor. Let's be real.
No, I know. I know.
Total for backhanded compliment. Yeah,
it's a sarcastic comment. Yeah, there's no way around that. But Ole Miss just beat number 4 LSU. They had a bye week. They have us, Washington State. This game was added about a year ago. And then following this week, they will be heading to number 10 Georgia and then number 6 Oklahoma after that to face off with John Mateer. So they have big games on their schedule. They've already been in big games. They're wanting to be in the playoffs this year. This is the perfect week for Washington State to take advantage.
Yeah, I mean, 32.5-point dogs this week. The one thing that I do like is we have Zevi in control. It's Zevi's team the rest of the year. there were some things you liked in that Apple Cup as well as the Colorado State game. I unfortunately didn't get to watch full, both of those games fully. But this is the type of game where you got to control the clock. You can't have unnecessary penalties. You can't be putting yourselves in first and 15 situations, first and 20 situations. I don't even know if you try to run the ball against Ole Miss. I really don't. I mean, you can't run the ball against SDSU, Idaho, and some of these other schools that are on the schedule. It's tough. So going to be excited to see what we get out of Devin Ellison this week. Only, a few snaps against Colorado State, no receptions. I think one target. That's a guy that's going to need to step up. A guy that's flying under the radar. Maybe all the coverage is on Josh Meredith and Devin Ellison. Well, hey, Jeremiah Noga, this is your time to step up in the slot and have a big game. 32.5 points. After what I've seen against North Texas and UW, you couldn't force. It's like Bird Box. Like you could not force me to go put money on the Cougs this weekend. I'm sorry. I hate to say it, but it's just a very scary situation that we have coming. But everybody that's going to be flying out to Ole Miss in the next couple days, flying into Memphis, doing the hour drive, I got mad props for you guys. That's the one thing I really love about our fan base. They show out on the road. They might leave at halftime at Martin Stadium, but they're there for 60 minutes on the road. So it's going to be exciting to kind of see, some of the photos and the videos and the game day atmosphere that pops up with some of the Cougs that might be out there. So I'm looking forward to that. And, how often do we get to watch a game at 9:30 in the morning? I get to wake up, make some coffee, maybe throw a little Bailey's in that thing. And
you can't drink all day if you don't start in the morning.
Right?
Classic Drake quote. Now with this game, it's a 32.5 favorites for Ole Miss. Obviously, the over/under is 58.5. So Vegas is predicting that the final score is going to be 45-13. Current expectation is that Ole Miss will be starting their dual threat quarterback Trinidad Chambliss, who is a D2 transfer from Ferris State just a year ago. Their starter Austin Simmons at quarterback is working back from an injury. As we talked with Steven, he had an injury to where he rolled his ankle a few weeks ago, and then in comes Trinidad. Both of these guys are dual threat quarterbacks, with which Washington State has not been able to keep up with so far this year. So it's going to be a great matchup. Obviously, their first time meeting, the first time Washington State is heading to SEC territory since 2013. It's going to be a fun time. Make sure to check it out this Saturday. And with that, we'll start with our interview with Mkristo and then have Steven on the second half. Mkristo, thanks as always for hopping on. The Cougs are heading to Oxford, Mississippi to face the number 4 ranked Ole Miss Rebels. What are your initial thoughts on their travel out to the SEC country, the first time since I believe 2013 that they faced an SEC opponent, number 4 overall?
It's crazy because, I think back of this all the time. I remember when I was playing, we played Auburn, and it was so hot, muggy, humid, thick, draining, heavy. It's a feeling that if you're not used to that, like it's a whole new ballgame. I think advantageous wise, it's a lot easier from someone to come from the south up to the west coast or to the north than vice versa. I remember I think it was like 16 pounds after the game, just water weight. It was insane. Like my jersey was so drenched, you could just wring it probably 4 or 5 times and it would just spill out. So it's different. They're going to have probably some cinder blocks in their feet, but you also think about the history and the prestige of being in an Ole Miss. I remember playing at Notre Dame and like all these cool schools and Auburn, all these stuff. I think it's gonna be really, really cool for a lot of these guys to go there and have that experience. What's different is it's definitely a different crowd and atmosphere than they're used to as well. So that's something that does play into it. So I'm excited about it. I think it's gonna be, Ole Miss is firing on all cylinders. How do you have a backup quarterback come in and play better than the starter? Right, that's just throwing absolute just missiles. So there's a lot of things that I'm concerned about, but I don't think that it's going to be a blowout. Put it that way.
What's the top maybe 2 things that's on the top of your concern list right now?
I mean, the biggest thing and I'm sure we'll talk about it here, is I think the biggest component that people have been thinking about is that quarterback position for us, right? Zeb's always been the guy. He's been the guy. And, it's frustrating that, it took, this full circle moment to get him back into the game. But can he come and strike first, strike hot, stay consistent? Because you saw that when we can get first downs, that opens up the run game, right? So Jimmy wants to be a running team, but if you're not getting first downs, there's no way to get the run going. And that's why people are like, well, our run game's not there. Well, that's because we're not getting first downs, right? We're not able to keep the plays alive and pick up some extra yardages and things like that. So my number one concern is, can Zeb lead this offense down the field, eat up clock? Because that's going to be another thing too, is can he eat up the clock, control the game? Defensively, can we corral this quarterback? And I think secondary wise, I think that we're doing a great job, but I don't think we've gotten to the quarterback like we needed to, so that we can get to those, those third and get off the field situations, if that makes sense.
Now, I have a question. So you mentioned that you don't think it's going to be a blowout. I just want to preface this by saying that right now the Cougars are 32.5-point dogs. So the prediction, the over-under is 58.5. So the prediction via Las Vegas is that it's going to be a final of 45.5 to 13. That's their prediction. I'll also preface this that Ole Miss just beat number 4 LSU before their bye week. And then coming up after Washington State, they're heading to number 10 Georgia and then to number 6 Oklahoma. So is part of that the fact that they've been in such big games, they're heading to bigger games, their goals at the playoffs? These Washington State Cougars are coming into town like this is nothing to worry about. Like, what are your thoughts going into how Cougs might
Ole Miss has everything to lose, right? They have everything to lose, but again, it's like they're going to look at it as like, oh, we're just going to play Washington State, right? They're not even in a Power 5 conference anymore. So there's that aspect of it. I think that Jimmy has these guys playing. I think coming off the bye week, he's going to have them playing hot and fast. I don't think it's going to be that big of a score. I think it's probably going to be a 2 to 3 score difference in the game with Ole Miss on top. But you might be surprised. You might be surprised to see what product is out there on the field this weekend.
I'll also just mention that UCLA just upset Penn State 42 to 37 at UCLA when UCLA was 24.5-point dog. So you know
UCLA also lost to New Mexico. I mean, it's kind of weird what's going on with some of the scores in college football this season. Devin Ellison, he made his return in the Apple Cup, and we saw his ability in one-on-one situations to break loose from opposing corners, had the touchdown reception, didn't have as many snaps against Colorado State, only 2 targets, 0 receptions. How key is he to – we don't know how healthy he is. He's been dealing with a heel thing. It sounds like it's just something that he's going to be dealing with all season long. How much of a difference does he make to the offense and what you saw with the Apple Cup?
I mean, you kind of compare it to the Mariners, right? It's like you bring in some of these closers on, someone's coming in with some kind of changeup or sinker or slider. It's just a different aspect that we can add to the game. And even compared to our quarterbacks, right? You have one quarterback that sits in the pocket, and you take that dynamic of no legs that or something that Zeb can do. It changes everything, how you game plan, how you coach, and everything. So if we can keep them on the field, that adds another dynamic that other opposing coaches have to game plan for. And it opens our offense up.
Who do you think should be getting the most carries out of the running back room right now?
Who's your favorite right now? Let's start
Kirby
with you.
Voorhees.
It's Leo.
No,
Really?
Leo for you. For me, it's Kirby Voorhees.
That 2 totally different backs. 2 totally different backs. But Leo he's I think he's more dynamic in my opinion. But I'm 50-50 on that one though. I'm 50-50 on that one. I'm mostly watching the defense when it comes back to that. I just want to make sure I get the ball back for him to run it again.
Okay, defensive question then. How big of a injury is Max Balloon to this defensive front for the rest of the season? A guy that was a senior, hopefully can get a medical red shirt.
Yeah, man, it's so crazy. I've been seeing players that have been in college for 7 years playing. I'm like, man, what was that? Where's that when I was playing? It's tough. I think one of the big things we talked about in the beginning was depth, especially with not having the same amount of NIL money that other schools have. That's what we're going to struggle with, because we're going to get those diamond in the rough guys that are just absolute dogs that are going to play well. But there's going to be some fall off after that. So when you lose a big time player we're going to feel it a lot harder than an LSU or an Ole Miss, a Washington will feel it because we don't have that necessarily depth, right?
Now, speaking from the defensive side, we've talked. Ole Miss has the dual threat quarterback. He's started for 3 games. He's averaging over 300 yards in the air,
Dude, 340, 350.
Approaching 100 yards on the ground himself per game, somewhere around 80. Yourself on the defensive line, how does facing a dual threat quarterback affect how you attack and pass rush? And
what do you got? Simmons and Trinidad. But I mean, these guys. So I'll put it this way. So I've played against some very, very, very dynamic quarterbacks. And I'll give you one example is Vince Young. The whole week of practice was basically don't let him run. Right? Because you got to imagine, I think the hardest position on the field is playing DB, right? So you're a defensive back. You have a guy that knows the snap count, knows the route, knows the play, running a 4-4, 4-3, 4-5 at you, and he can do whatever he wants. And you're running backwards, and all of a sudden you have to react to what he has to react to. But not only that, if the quarterback scrambles, they start running, you got to come tackle them. Or if he stays behind the line, you have to still guard your guy because they're going to pass to him. It blows my mind as a DB, second and third level guy, how hard that will break down your defense because all of your coverages are based off of going to an area or a person. When the quarterback runs, you have to decide, am I going to break this to go tackle that, right? Or am I going to play this and keep my integrity here, which could be a big play either way. So when I tell you it is one of the hardest things in football to do, it is one of the hardest things to do, especially with that mesh point.
And then speaking to, right, it's expected to be 64,000 sold out fans down in Oxford. What's the biggest crowd that you played in front of, and really how big of an impact does that have? Does that just juice you up?
Yeah, man, I'm telling you right now, I think one of the loudest games I ever played in was we were both top 5 going to Autzen Stadium. So Washington State, Oregon, both top 5. I think Joey Harrington was up for the Heisman. I remember that Autzen Stadium was so loud, sold out crowd, not an empty seat in this house. You can see the rubber pellets bouncing on the field. And to this day, it gives me goosebumps because those are the games you live for. The band's playing, striking up the band, Cougs chomping, fans everywhere. The momentum in this game, guys, I want to I don't even know how to express it to you from the bottom of my heart. When there's a sold out Martin Stadium and it's a third down and that da da da, that plays and the rumble of the band, there's no high in this world that can touch that. Now you put that over to an Ole Miss, right? And you got Zeb getting ready to take a snap and he's getting ready to try and do his cadence. There's no way you could hear any of the linemen. I mean, you feel it in your chest. It's so loud, right? So the number one thing coaches always tell you to do is quiet the stands. And the only way to do that is first downs and touchdowns or sacks or interceptions.
What's the probability of some trick plays, maybe an onside kick?
I don't know if that's something Jimmy's super hot to trot on. I think he's like a downhill, let me come smash you in the mouth and try and get the ball. But again, when you don't have the same depth and resources, you got to get a little scrappy, right? So that might be something too. It comes down the pipeline.
One thing I wanted to end with, going to the professional side of things, NFL Cougs. What have you seen so far? Who's been the best watch for you? Frankie Louvu, Dayon Henley.
Dayon. He's a wrecking ball. Dayon Henley's an absolute wrecking ball. Watching him play and seeing his success. I think he played through the flu a couple games ago and just super inspirational to that defense. But Frankie Louvu, he's a story that people thought he was going to be, maybe a 1-2 year guy, and he finds a niche, and all of a sudden he's a dude. Man, God bless that kid, man. It's just fun to see him walk. And then Hicks, I think Jaden Hicks had some big plays last night. Yeah, anytime I see the Cougs out there balling out, man, super proud of them because knowing where we came from up in the, little Washington State, in the Pacific Northwest. I remember, I'll tell you this quick story. I remember I was playing for Jacksonville Jaguars, and then I'm in the locker room and, what was it? Fred Taylor got this huge box from University of Florida, huge box with like a gator on top of it, opens it up, and there's just all this stuff, from University of Florida that he got. And I remember I looked down, I had this Washington State shirt on with a hole in it. I was like, damn, they hooked me up like that. But it's like you talk about resources and things like that, and it'd be nice at some point to get Washington State back to a Power Five, get some more resources up there, and start battling. But anyways, that was a little side story.
Frank, yeah.
Speaking of resources, Coach Rogers, after his after game press conference against UW, he got into that resources talk that we've heard previous coaches talk about. He immediately apologized for it on Monday. Yeah. What did you see from that?
I love it. I love it because, excuses are tools of incompetence. He's going to tell you that. He's going to tell you that. And I love that he owned up to it and said, I don't know why I'm sitting here, complaining. There's no reason why I should complain. Like, I'm coming here. I knew what I was signing up for, right? I'm going to put my best foot forward, my best lineup forward, and we're going to go compete. So, again, it makes it's not going to change the game by complaining about it. The only thing you can do is, stand up and try to do something about it.
Awesome. Mkristo, really appreciate your time as always. It's going to be an interesting one. It'll be a fun environment to watch this Saturday. Thanks again for hopping on. Go Cougs.
Appreciate you guys. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
We're joined by Steven Willis, who is the host of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. First off, Steven, thanks for hopping on. Want to hear some insights into Ole Miss. Obviously, Washington State is heading out to Oxford, Mississippi this weekend. Right now, Washington State is 32.5-point dogs. Ole Miss is coming off of a victory against number 4 LSU. Lodged in between, a matchup. Ole Miss is going to be heading to at number 10, Georgia, and then at number 6, Oklahoma. But first off, it's Washington State. So can you speak through, Ole Miss's season up to this point so far?
It's been pretty interesting. They've been fairly dominant, other than having 2 first quarters in the first 2 games where the starting quarterback at that point, Austin Simmons, threw 2 interceptions in both of those games. But Ole Miss won the game against Georgia State 63-7, and they outscored Kentucky after the interceptions 30-13. They've been fine all season. They've been a fairly dominant team, and the defense is starting to come along to the point where the front 7 or the front 6 or however you want to put it against LSU, Ole Miss just rushed 3 the entire game. They basically did the old Washington Apple Cup defense against Mike Leach, to where they did that over and over again. I mean, we appreciated that whenever he ended up at Mississippi State. That was a nice blueprint, but they were able to do that to LSU, completely frustrate them. And the defensive line is young guys. It's like all sophomores and freshmen and people like that, and they're just growing up before your eyes. But this Ole Miss team, very, very good. Everybody likes to talk about what Lane Kiffin is good at. The thing that he's probably best at is roster building. And the fact that he was able to build this and kind of be under the radar this year in what was supposed to be a rebuilding year is phenomenal.
Obviously last season, you guys, Ole Miss fans, bitter taste in their mouth not making the college football playoff. But, what's kind of been Lane Kiffin and the team's mantra this season, through fall camp and through these first 5 weeks?
It was to win the close games, because the weird thing about last year, if you look at the statistics, Ole Miss was like 2nd in scoring defense nationally and 3rd in scoring offense nationally, and they didn't make the college football playoff. It was absolutely bizarre. And that's because Ole Miss lost every 1-score game they were in. They went 0-3 in those games. The rest of the games they won by double digits. So this offseason, Lane Kiffin made it a point that they wanted to be a little bit more workmanlike. They wanted to be lunch pail teams. And this season already, Ole Miss has won 3 1-score games against Kentucky, LSU, and Arkansas. They made the plays they were supposed to make. And I think that was the emphasis from Lane Kiffin, other than the fact that he really likes the offensive skill talent that he has assimilated. It's one of those things. He really likes them. You can see the way he lights up talking about Trinidad Chambliss, who was a backup quarterback coming in, who is likely going to take the first snap for Washington State. He likes what he has. And it's interesting to see Lane Kiffin whenever he's lost Trey Harris and Jackson Dart and all of those guys from a year ago. It almost felt like coming into this fall camp like he was the cat that ate the canary. It was that he was very excited about this season, even if nobody else was. I think he knew something. And over the first 5 games, he did.
So can you speak to, Trinidad coming in through the portal, and then obviously there's the competition, or is it an injury that gave him the opportunity a few weeks ago? And now he's obviously seems to be a top dual threat quarterback. Washington State has not been great at limiting the dual threat quarterbacks so far this season.
Yeah, both Ole Miss quarterbacks are dual threat guys. So either way, Washington State would have saw a dual threat quarterback. But about 4 minutes left to go in the Kentucky game, Austin Simmons got his ankle turned in the game, and badly sprained his ankle. And at the end of that game, Trinidad Chambliss led basically the clinching drive in that football game. He took over and had his first start against Arkansas. He threw for 300 yards and ran for over 50. He did the same the first 3 games. He's the first SEC player potentially ever that has thrown for 300 yards and ran for 50 yards in each of 3 starts.
Really?
Yes. It goes back to 1992, but if you remember what football was like in the 90s and the 80s, they weren't throwing for 300 yards. The quarterback wasn't running for 60 yards because it's just the way that the game was. I think they changed the statistical thing, the way they counted rushing yards and all that. That's the reason they go back to there. But Trinidad Chambliss has been a spark plug in this offense. And it's not that he is the dude. It's not like it's Cam Newton or Johnny Manziel or any of those guys lining up at quarterback. I like to call him an athletic game manager. And Lane Kiffin has assembled, I should say, wide receivers and running backs, skill position players all over the place. He always recruits wide receivers and running back pretty well. And the problem that Jackson Dart had a year ago is anytime plan B or plan A didn't work, there was no plan B. So you would look at the box score and it's like, hey, he threw 14 completions to Trey Harris or 10 completions to Jordan Watkins, whoever the number 1 was that day, but there'd only be 4 or 5 completions for the rest of the whole team. Trinidad Chambliss is completing to about 9 different receivers every game. He's getting the ball out in under 3 seconds, and he's using his legs to run the ball at an effective rate. Put all 3 of those together, he's kind of the athletic game manager to let these other guys be really good. Now, Trinidad gets all the credit because, 300 yards, 50 yards, the proof is in the pudding there. But in the end of the day, how he's getting there is just by being a game manager. They've been elite in the 2-minute offense this year since Trinidad's come in there. They've been elite in the 4-minute offense. They ran the last 5 minutes and 20 seconds off the clock against LSU to close out that game. It's impressive what Chambliss is doing, and he's just doing it in a very simple way of getting all of these weapons involved, not more than 3 or 4 catches for any particular receiver, just all of them seemingly have 3 catches in a game. And that's probably the thing that has me the most impressed.
I guess it's tough to, when you're talking about playing the number 4 team in the country on their home turf, watching them through their first 5 games, you beat a pretty good Tulane team 45-10, obviously take down LSU. What areas of concern have you seen, if any, with this team so far?
Well, at the beginning of the year, they were giving up explosive plays in the run game, which if you look at the statistics for Washington State, that doesn't necessarily help Washington State. But the first couple of games, the run game was able to get free and they were having explosives. That stopped in Tulane. They ran the ball for 4 and 5 yards, but it stopped. And it didn't happen against LSU either. If they limit those explosives and make the other team drive the ball down the field, Pete Golding is an elite defensive coordinator. He was with Nick Saban at Alabama for several years before he moved over to Ole Miss. And his tenet, other than the fact that he wants really good players doing really good things and he has a very complex defense, is his idea is, hey, we're going to make you drive 80 yards down the field. We're going to make you take as many plays as possible, and you will going to screw up at some point in time during that drive. And we are going to let you take you out of scoring range. If you can run 10 to 12 perfect plays, yeah, you'll probably get some points. But I don't think you can do that. And Pete Golding did that against LSU. They couldn't do it. Tulane, they couldn't do it. If you take away the explosive plays to where there's no shortcuts, not many teams that Ole Miss has seen so far this season has been able to do it. Now, one thing that I'm impressed about is Washington State's passing attack. This is probably the best passing attack that Ole Miss has seen, honestly, schematically this season. LSU, theoretically, they should do it because they have all the 4- and 5-star athletes, but Garrett Nussmeier didn't look right. Jake Retzlaff, everybody talking about he threw incompletions on his first 11 passes. That's not it. Taylor Green running the ball was kind of more of a dual threat thing than schematically opening you up in the passing game. So this will be a test in a different way of Washington State being able to throw the football. And Pete Golding, listen, he was basically taking a graduate level seminar course under Nick Saban in the defensive backfield. That defensive backfield is extremely complex. They do some matchup zones. They do a lot of different stuff that's kind of exotic from time to time. This game schematically, you look there, I think Washington State has completed passes to 18 different receivers this season. Mm-hmm. No quarterback that they have. They started out with, what is his name, Jackson Potter, and then they went on to, was it Zevi?
Julian Duggar, and then Zevi. Yeah, it's musical chairs.
Yes, and it skipped the number 2 quarterback for some reason in that weird North Texas game. But it's a situation to where you don't want any of that to get hot, because if Washington State is going to hurt you in Oxford, Mississippi, which I'm not 100% sure that they can, but if they do it, it's going to be through the passing game, because schematically they are really good at getting a post pattern open or something down the field that you don't think that can happen. Now, the question is going to be in this game that I'm really interested about. Washington State does a good job at pass pro, but they haven't played SEC defensive linemen yet. And if for some reason you have, instead of having 4 seconds to throw the ball for that deep post pattern that Zevi is so much in love with, that he always is talking about, if you have 3 seconds to where it doesn't have a chance to get open, Ole Miss is going to get home. And if that happens, you're going to get in long yardage situations. I don't think that Washington State can live in long yardage situations.
No.
This is a game that they absolutely have to stay ahead of the chains. Tulane tried that in the run game, basically just folded on the pass game to try and just make it 2nd and 6, 3rd and 2, trying to make that work. They couldn't do that. They couldn't get the explosive. They couldn't work it. This is going to be different, because I love the schematic pass game of Washington State. I can sit here and watch it all day long. It's fantastic. But I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. I described it on my show. Listen, Jimmy Rogers, he created a dynasty essentially at South Dakota State. He knows what he's doing. Yeah, he's really good at it. And he's going to take that same philosophy to Washington State. It's going to happen. It's just not going to happen this year. This year, Washington State looks like a little bit of a clunky team, to where there's parts that are working, parts that are not. It doesn't ever seem quite synced up. But you can see the bones there of what they're trying to build. And I think they're going to be pretty good. And, as Lane Kiffin said in the SEC teleconference today, this is the number 1 team in the SEC versus the number 1 team in the Pac-12. So this cross-country classic. So it should be pretty fun. Ole Miss should win this. I think the line's kind of fair. Washington State looks like they have problems on the edges in the run game. I think Jonah Coleman from Washington was able to open them up, and missed tackles and stuff like that. That's Kejuan Lacey is one of the leaders in the entire country on forcing missed tackles, and that's problematic. But I do think that Washington State's going to score a few times. I do not think Ole Miss is going to cover the 33 points, because the reality of it is, you mentioned it earlier, Ole Miss is in Sanford Stadium next week. And if you go by my YouTube views right now, nobody's really paying attention to this game. They're wanting to fast forward to next week. And Ole Miss needs a quick start in the football game. If they get a quick start, just they can kill Washington State. The game is over, dead and buried. But if it's a slow start, one of those dreaded sandwich trap game starts, Washington State can score the football, and all of a sudden it's 17-14 at halftime or something like that. So it'll be interesting to see. I like what Washington State is doing. I like the direction they're heading, especially since the Big Ten just completely destroyed y'all and F y'all in like 7 different ways. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you guys and Oregon State just banded up, it's like, no. We own all of this now. Y'all get out of here. This is all us now. We're going to reconstitute this whole conference. We're going to make it work. And you guys can go do whatever you want to do. Always going to have respect for that, because it was just fantastic, because they thought that you guys were going to end up in
the Mountain West.
Yeah, in the Mountain West or FCS. They thought that this would literally kill you. And and screw them for that. Seriously, screw them for that. You guys in Oregon State, that is Pac-12 after dark. Ryan Leaf and Gardner Minshew and all of that stuff. You cut on the TV at 10 o'clock Eastern here, and all of a sudden you watch those games. And the fact that they took that away and now we're watching Big 12 after dark, that doesn't make any sense.
I'll say this, Steven. I think if Mike Leach was still the commander-in-chief at WSU when all of this shitstorm happened, I truly believe that WSU would have found their way into the Big 12 or something. But I mean, when you take a look at it, I like what you said about Jimmy, and you know, you hit the nail on the head where you see some parts are working, some aren't. You know, from my standpoint, I took this year, get to a bowl game any way you can, and that's a victory for the season. You have 1 year to kind of get some guys in, start getting your schemes going, and then you get into the Pac-12 next season, you know, with the Boise States of the world and, you know, SDSUs and the Colorado States. But, you know,
which, by the way, the fact that all those teams have state in their name is hilarious to me.
Yeah.
But, you know, I take a look, and you take a look at Rutgers and Kansas State and Iowa State. And it's like they all have seats at the table and we don't. It just doesn't make any sense to me. You know, when you take a look at viewership ratings, there's tons of Cougs that are in the Seattle market, Spokane market. Seattle's a top 10 market. Spokane's a top 40 market. It's just location, really. Nobody wants to go to Pullman. But one thing I wanted to dive into, our fan base loves traveling, loves going to road games. And I wanted to hear from you just kind of what Vaught Hemingway and the whole buildup and just the game day scenery for an Ole Miss football game. If you can kind of, you know, tell the Cougs that are going out there what they can expect, because they outdrank Auburn and their bars in 2013. They'll travel in Cougs booze.
Well, Oxford, first of all, there's probably some similarities between Pullman and Oxford. Memphis is an hour away, but there's not really any other big towns around Oxford there. You're going to have to fly into Memphis. Don't fly into Jackson. That's like 2.5 hours away. But flying to Memphis, you drive down to Oxford. The Grove, probably the best pregame tailgate in all of college football. LSU fans would fight you, but the Grove is fantastic. The stadium, smallest side for an SEC venue. It's only 64,000 capacity.
Only 64,000.
Only.
Yeah. It's not the overly intimidating place when you walk into it. You're going to walk into it and it's like, oh, the gradient on or whatever on the stairs, it's like not as steep as some places and all of that stuff. But it's pretty fun. They built a nice little atmosphere. The students are fantastic. I wish that Washington State fans would have gotten to see the LSU game. That place was absolutely rocking and electric. This game has a chance to be a little bit weird. It just does. But it's a fun atmosphere, nice people that for the better part of the last 50 years were kind of not relevant. And over the last 5 years or so, they are. So there's an appreciation of what's going on. There's an appreciation of people coming in. You're not going to deal with like the Bama snobs or the Auburn snobs and stuff like that. They're going to be people that understand what's happening. Good salt of the earth. Downtown is the snow globe town. That's what they call it, the snow globe town. They haven't hung the Christmas lights up, but whenever they do that, they light up the whole square and all of that. But it's a, I don't know, 17,000 population town with a 20,000 population college.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right up Pullman's alley.
Yeah. So,
and then,
it's tricky to get to. I used to be the video coordinator at Ole Miss, like in another lifetime. And we used to have to drive up to Memphis to pick up game tape. This is back before you could just like basically line wire it from one place to another. And, you know, it was inconvenient at times. And, you know, you try and get to Memphis and back and make the trip and like, oh, I can get there in 52 minutes. And it's like, oh, well, then do it, you know? So, yeah, it's fun. It's exciting. It's very rural. And I think Washington State fans will enjoy it and probably see a place in the Southeastern Conference that they can really relate to, honestly.
Yeah, it's just exciting to be able to go and compete in the SEC territory. Like Dylan has said, we haven't played against since 2013. And I'm curious your insight. You know, this game was added to both teams' schedule right at a year ago before the change in head coach and whatnot. It's 75 new players at Washington State. I'm curious your insights on how this game came to be in the first place, if there was a game that fell out for Ole Miss, and what was the initial reaction to Washington State being added?
Well, what happened was, and anybody from Wake Forest would agree with this, the week of the Ole Miss Wake Forest game, everybody looked at the film and they did not want any smoke. They did not want this smoke. They didn't want to do it. They didn't want to go get their brains beat in. Ole Miss beat them 40-7 in Winston-Salem, and they canceled the game. They paid the $1 million and bought the next year's game out, so they didn't come down to Oxford.
What staff canceled it? Was it still the previous coach?
No, it was still the previous coach. It was Dave Clawson and those guys.
Okay.
So they did that, and so we were panicking to do it. We already have Oregon State on the schedule twice in the next 10 years or so.
Okay.
So it wasn't going to be Oregon State. So the natural phone call obviously was Washington State because of the schedule issues that they're trying to put together. And they said, hey, yeah, we'll go down to Oxford. Just write us the check. We'll play the football game, have a good time. And I respect anybody that's willing to do that. And I don't respect anybody that is willing to chicken out the way that Wake Forest did, basically off a game field. They didn't even play the game yet. Already decided before, we're going to get our brains beat in. We're going to cancel next year. That's exactly how that went. And then they did get their brains beat in, if we're going to be honest. But yeah, ACC, Power 4, Wake Forest, that is not a good look.
Do you know how much WSU is receiving? Is it a couple mil? Is it around there? I mean, do you have any specifics?
I do not have specifics, but the only one that usually gets a couple of mil is probably the FCS school. They fight from time, or the G5 game.
Yeah,
I imagine that Washington State's getting somewhere around $1 million. That's what I think it would be. But yeah, like I said, yeah, I appreciate you guys coming down to Oxford, because literally the candy ass stuff that they pulled in Winston-Salem is just ridiculous.
And I just kind of wanted to go back to how you're saying this could be maybe a weird game where you maybe have this sandwich game and a slow start 17-14. I got to shout out Barstool Big Cat. He might have screwed WSU. He tweeted, is it just me, or is Washington State kind of a live dog this weekend? I think they could beat Ole Miss outright. Total trap game. No chance Lane has his team ready with Georgia on deck. And Lane Kiffin, Mr. Twitter, retweets it. Needed this, 3 exclamation points. Thanks, BC. Ole Miss football fans, we need you Saturday. I don't know if you happen to see that tweet.
Yes, that was pre-set up, by the way. Lane was on the show last
Yeah.
week and said, "Hey, can you just say that they're going to upset Ole Miss?" And they said they would do it. And then, yeah, that was planned. And the reality is, in the facility in Oxford, it says SEC #1 versus Pac-12 #1. So they're trying to play whatever coaching games they can to try and get these kids' attention before, because, like I said,
When Oregon
if Ole
State is
Miss,
winless.
yes, or Oregon State is. Listen, that's pretty good because y'all play them twice and you have 3 wins.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that should be 5 right
Should get
there.
us right
So you
there.
need one more. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's crazy to see what's happening to Oregon State, because at the outset of the season, I was pretty impressed with what they were able to do in the offseason. You bring in Malik Murphy. I mean, he's got to have a $2 to $3 million price tag, and they can't even kick an extra point right now. It's horrible. They can't kick, they can't defend, they can't play offense. It's truly sad to see what's going on with Oregon State. But one other thing. When you take a look at, we had Mike Leach for years and years, and, maybe not the best analogy, but Lane Kiffin is his own man. He goes by the beat of his own drum. What's it like being able to be with Lane, his press conferences? Because he's just, he's one of the fun figures we have in college football.
Well, first of all, the first thing you learn out in Lane Kiffin is he's not the persona that everybody acts like he is. He might do the trolling stuff on Twitter, and he definitely trolls people on Twitter. My goodness, it is absolutely nuts. But it's gotten to the point where something could happen on Twitter and the Ole Miss fan base doesn't even notice it. Everybody else is freaking out like there's a fire in the building. Ole Miss fans are like, oh, whatever. It's just Lane being Lane. But we've gotten to the point in Oxford to where the whole Lane Kiffin family, the whole Kiffin, Chris Kiffin, the whole 9 yards, they're living in Oxford, Mississippi. All the kids are in school in the Oxford school areas. Lane's been at Ole Miss for 6 years. This is the 6th season. And it feels like every year, the national media, like the ESPN types, the Fox Sports types, they're telling me, okay, Lane Kiffin's gone. He's going to go to Florida or Oregon or whatever the job of the day is. And I was like, okay, are you sure about that? And it's just weird. All I know is I respect the heck out of Lane for his offensive mind and his roster building. Fantastic. He does a fantastic job in the transfer portal as well. As you can tell by Trinidad Chambliss, went to D2 Ferris State and picked him up.
Wow.
I don't necessarily even it doesn't even register anymore, the stuff that he does on social media. It's just there. It just happens.
And imagine if Mike Leach had a Twitter account when he was coaching. That would be.
He did, and he used it.
Oh, did he?
We had about 2 years of Mike Leach at Mississippi State and Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss before.
And that was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And they were fast friends. And it goes back to when Lane Kiffin was at SC and Mike Leach was at Washington State, and building the relationships, hanging out. The Pac-12 they always talked about was a little bit different of an animal than the SEC. In the SEC, you got to be enemies with everybody, And Pac-12 is like, hey, let's go have a beer. And it was interesting because during COVID, they were playing with each other's masks at an event that they had to do in Jackson for the state government. And there's always something hopping up between the two of them. Not anything malicious or anything or nefarious or anything like that. It's just they always were up to something. They were kind of fast friends and all of that. So I hate that we don't get that anymore, because I think everybody was in a better place because that existed, if that makes sense.
And then, sorry, Steven, what is the name of the rivalry again? But I know it's something egg, right? With
it's the official name is the Battle for the Golden Egg, and the reason it's the Battle for the Golden Egg, it was a football trophy that was created back in 1925. So it looked like the old rugby football. The footballs look different. So today it looks like an egg because of the way it's shaped. So it's the Battle for the Golden Egg. And the newspapers were back in the 80s when Ole Miss and Mississippi State weren't very good. They were winning 3 and 4 games a year for about a decade. They started calling it the Egg Bowl because that was the only bowl game that they were going to play in. No joke. That's from the 80s. And that's how it's gotten that name. Listen, that is the most fun rivalry in all of college sports, in my opinion. There have been three brawls that have happened in the game to where players stretched from 10-yard line to 10-yard line in a single file line, squared up on each other, and started swinging. I mean, it wasn't just a fight over here, a skirmish over here. No, it was everybody. This is a fun rivalry. It goes back to the early days in the state of Mississippi where Ole Miss was viewed as the doctors and the lawyers and kind of the aristocracy of the state, and Mississippi State was viewed as the farmers and stuff like that. So they obviously didn't like each other. The whole reason the Egg Bowl trophy was created because Ole Miss rushed Mississippi State's field in Starkville in like 1927 and tore down the goalpost, and it ended up in folding chairs being smashed over people's heads. There's a history of this game. And to this day, I always tell people that's the game I most don't want to lose as an Ole Miss fan. The game I most want to win is the LSU game. The game I most don't want to lose is that Mississippi State game because, man, they make you feel it. They do. And I'm sure it's the same way if it goes the other way. Whoever loses that game is going to feel it to the point where the next game is going to ratchet that much up. And then next year is that much up. And it just constantly isn't getting bigger and bigger.
My final question, I would regret not asking about Jackson Dart and what he's doing with the Giants. You know, he takes over for Russell Wilson. Cam Scatterbo from Arizona State is now, the duo at the running back position. Just take me through Jackson Dart's final year at Ole Miss and what you've seen so far with him with the Giants.
He was the best quarterback in the country coming out of college. I don't care about combines. I don't care about the Cam Ward stuff and all of that. Jackson Dart was a special quarterback. The only problem that he had whenever he was at Ole Miss was the fact that he tended to focus on Trey Harris, who was the best wide receiver in the SEC. And it was like, oh, Trey's down there somewhere, just throw it up. And sometimes that would get him into trouble. Jackson's a great quarterback. He has an elite ball placement. His running ability is just second to none. And his leadership is phenomenal. A lot of people don't realize that 2024 team with Walter Nolan and all those dudes, they were recruited by Jackson Dart. He got them there. He has that personality. And I think where he is in New York City and all of that, if they just have time to get it, because I think Brian Daboll is the right person for Jackson Dart's skill set, but will Daboll get the time necessary to build Jackson Dart up? That is the question in my mind right now. But Jackson Dart has every tool that you would want to be a quarterback in New York City, including Eli Manning right down the road, who's another Ole Miss quarterback.
Yeah, that's a great point. My last question for you. You said, hey, you don't think Ole Miss is going to cover the 32.5 this week. What's your final score, Steven?
I've got it at 38-17. I think it's going to be a close quarter and a half to where it's quick. Ole Miss scores right before the half. They maybe do the first 4 of the second half, get the ball, go down and score again, and they kind of separate a little bit, and there's a garbage time cut touchdown by Washington State. That's what I think is going to happen.
Awesome, Steven. Well, thanks for hopping on. If you're listening to this episode, make sure to go check out the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Listen to their preview of this upcoming matchup. It's going to be a fun weekend. Enjoy your time in Oxford if you're down there. And again, Steven, thanks for hopping on.
No problem at all. And be safe heading down to Oxford, and don't speed in a rural town. Do not speed in a small town.
We've got Colfax as well. You guys ever come out to Pullman, don't speed in Colfax. Hey, Steven, was there anything else we left out? Is there any other spots we can find your work?
Locked On Ole Miss. You can catch me on Twitter at the Steven Willis. You have that address. But basically Locked On Ole Miss, and that Twitter account's going to get roughly everything.
Beautiful. Well, we'll be liking waking up at 9 a.m. and getting ready for some SEC Pac-12 football this weekend.
All right. Yeah, that's right. It is early. Body clock is going to be real early.
Bloody Mary time.
Yeah, seriously. Or just start drinking at like 4 a.m. It'll get daylight
There you go.
eventually, right?